When the director you're falling for is also the one calling cut. When your co-star crosses every line. When the woman you didn't expect is the one who sees you. Which story do you choose? Be honest. Are you actually watching this? Or am I just background noise while you're doing laundry, cooking dinner, working out, driving, pretending to work? No judgment. I just want to know if I should add more images or keep it simple. And let me know something. What corner of the world are you in? I love seeing how far these stories travel. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Chen adjusted her script for the third time that morning. She sat in a sterile waiting room alongside 20 other actresses, each one more polished than the last. Her agent had called this audition a game changer, a role in the upcoming romantic drama that would catapult her struggling career into the spotlight. The part was simple on paper. Play the devoted wife of a powerful CEO in a story about corporate intrigue and forbidden love. Mia had memorized every line, practiced every gesture, and prepared herself for the emotional depth the role demanded. What she hadn't prepared for was the woman who would walk through that door and change everything she thought she knew about acting, about herself, and about what it meant to truly feel something real. The casting director called her name, and Mia stood, smoothing down her navy blazer. She walked into the audition room with practiced confidence, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. 3 people sat behind a long table, a tired-looking producer, a board assistant, and her, the director, Victoria Lauron. Victoria was legendary in the industry, known for her intense character studies and her ability to draw raw performances from even the most inexperienced actors. She wore all black, her silver hair cropped short, her dark eyes assessing Mia with an intensity that made her breath catch. Mia had seen Victoria's films a dozen times, studied her work, admired her from afar. But nothing had prepared her for the magnetic presence of the woman in person, the way those eyes seemed to see straight through every defense Mia had carefully constructed over her 28 years. Chen, Victoria said, her voice low and measured, with a slight French accent that made even her name sound exotic. I've reviewed your portfolio. You have technical skill, but I need to know if you can access real emotion. This role requires vulnerability, authenticity.
Can you give me that?
Mia nodded, her throat suddenly dry. She'd been asked this question before, but never with such penetrating directness. Victoria gestured to a chair positioned in the center of the room. We'll read the proposal scene. I'll read opposite you as Elena, the CEO. Show me what happens when your character realizes her marriage is a carefully constructed lie. Mia took her position, forcing herself to breathe, to center herself in the character of Sophia, the wife who discovers her perfect life is built on deception. They began the scene, and Mia felt herself slipping into Sophia's skin, feeling the character's confusion and hurt.
But something was different this time.
Victoria didn't just read the lines. She inhabited Elena with a commanding presence that filled the room. When Victoria stepped closer, delivering Elena's cold dismissal of their marriage as merely a business arrangement, Mia felt genuine tears spring to her eyes. It wasn't just the words or the performance. It was the way Victoria looked at her, the way she seemed to reach inside Mia and pull out emotions she hadn't known were there. The scene ended, and Mia stood frozen, her heart pounding, unsure where Sophia ended and she began. Victoria studied her for a long moment, then smiled, a slow curve of her lips that made Mia's pulse race. Interesting, Victoria murmured, making a note on her pad. You have depth, Mia. More than I expected. But this role will push you in ways you can't imagine. Are you prepared for that? Mia wanted to say yes immediately, wanted to prove herself worthy of this chance. But Victoria's gaze held her captive, and she found herself wondering what exactly the director meant by being pushed. Was it just about the acting, or was there something more in those knowing eyes? I'm prepared, Mia finally said, and she meant it, even though she had no idea what she was agreeing to. Victoria nodded, dismissing her with a gesture, and Mia walked out of that room knowing her life had just shifted in some fundamental way. 3 days later, her agent called with the news. She'd gotten the role. Mia would play Sophia Morgan, the elegant wife of CEO Elena Morgan, in what promised to be the year's most talked about drama. The shooting schedule was intense, 6 weeks on location at a private estate, with most of the cast living on site for continuity and immersion. Mia packed her bags with trembling hands, equal parts excitement and inexplicable nervousness. She told herself it was just about the opportunity, about finally getting her breakthrough role. But late at night, when she closed her eyes, she saw Victoria's intense gaze and felt something stir inside her that had nothing to do with professional ambition. She pushed the feeling away, labeled it as admiration for a talented director, and refused to examine it any closer. The estate was breathtaking, a sprawling mansion surrounded by manicured gardens and ancient oak trees. Mia arrived on a crisp autumn morning, her suitcases heavy with the designer wardrobe the production had provided for her character. A production assistant showed her to her room, a spacious suite with windows overlooking the gardens. As she unpacked, Mia tried to settle her nerves by reviewing her script, losing herself in Sophia's journey from naive wife to woman awakening to her own desires. The story was more complex than she'd initially understood. Sophia's arc involved discovering not just her husband's deception, but her own capacity for passion she'd never acknowledged. There was a subplot about a mysterious woman who worked for the company, someone who would make Sophia question everything. Mia wondered who would play that role, and whether they'd have the same unsettling effect on her that Victoria had during the audition. The first table read happened in the mansion's grand library, where leather-bound books lined walls that reached toward a vaulted ceiling painted with classical frescoes. Mia arrived early, her script annotated with notes and character motivations, her coffee growing cold as she waited for the rest of the cast to assemble. Victoria entered first, commanding the room without saying a word, her presence like a gravitational force that pulled everyone's attention. She took her seat at the head of the massive oak table and began arranging her materials with precise movements. Mia watched, fascinated by the director's complete focus, the way she seemed to exist in her own world until she chose to acknowledge others. When Victoria's eyes finally lifted and found Mia's across the table, something electric passed between them, a recognition that made Mia's stomach flutter with an emotion she couldn't name. Other cast members filtered in, introducing themselves with varying degrees of warmth and professionalism. James Porter would play Elena's business rival, a charming man with an easy smile who immediately tried to befriend everyone. Rebecca Stone, a veteran actress with 3 decades of experience, would portray Elena's mother, the family matriarch with secrets of her own. Then there was Marcus Webb, who would play Sophia's brother, providing comic relief and emotional support throughout her journey. Mia shook hands, made small talk, tried to focus on building rapport with her scene partners. But her attention kept drifting back to Victoria, who was conferring quietly with the cinematographer about shot compositions and lighting schemes. Mia told herself this fixation was natural, that any actor would be focused on their director, especially one as renowned as Victoria Laurent. "We're missing someone," Victoria announced, checking her watch with a slight frown. "Our lead actress should have been here 10 minutes ago. Punctuality is not optional on my sets." Mia's confusion must have shown on her face, because Rebecca leaned over with a knowing smile. "You didn't know? You're not playing opposite a character, dear. They cast someone to play Elena. It's unusual, I know, but Victoria insisted on it for authenticity." Before Mia could process this information, the library doors opened with dramatic flair, and a woman strode in with the confidence of someone who knew all eyes would turn to her. She was stunning, tall and athletic with long dark hair and features that belonged on magazine covers. Her designer outfit probably cost more than Mia's entire wardrobe, and she wore it with careless elegance. "Apologies for my tardiness," the woman said, her voice smooth as honey, with no trace of actual regret. "Traffic from the city was abysmal. I'm Alexis Kane, and I'll be playing Elena Morgan." She circled the table, making eye contact with each person as if assessing their worth, before stopping directly beside Mia's chair. Up close, Alexis was even more striking, with green eyes that sparkled with mischief and a smile that suggested she was perpetually amused by some private joke. "And you must be my darling wife, Alexis said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. Mia shook it, noticing how warm and firm Alexis's grip was, how long she held on before finally releasing. I've seen your work. You're quite talented for someone so early in their career. We're going to have such fun together. Victoria cleared her throat, a sound that cut through the room's chatter like a blade. Now that we're all finally assembled, let's begin. This story is about deception, desire, and the courage it takes to choose authenticity over comfort. Each of your characters will be challenged to confront their own truths. Her gaze swept across the table, lingering on Mia and then Alexis. The relationship between Sophia and Elena is the heart of this narrative. On the surface, they appear to be the perfect power couple, the CEO and her devoted partner. But underneath, Sophia is suffocating in a life that looks right but feels wrong. And Elena, despite her coldness, is trapped in her own way, unable to break free from the expectations that have defined her entire existence. They began reading through the script, and Mia was immediately struck by the intensity of the scenes she'd be playing with Alexis. The dialogue crackled with subtext, every conversation between Sophia and Elena layered with things left unsaid. Alexis read her lines with polished perfection, her Elena commanding and controlled, giving away nothing. But when they reach the scene where cracks begin to show in Elena's facade, where Sophia confronts her about their loveless marriage, Alexis transformed. Her voice softened, revealing vulnerability beneath the CEO's armor, and for just a moment, Mia saw genuine pain flash across those green eyes. It was masterful acting, and Mia found herself responding instinctively, letting Sophia's own suppressed emotions rise to the surface. The room fell silent as they played the scene, everyone transfixed by the chemistry that seemed to ignite spontaneously between them. When the read-through ended 3 hours later, Victoria looked satisfied for the first time that day. Good work, everyone. Tomorrow we begin filming. I expect complete commitment from all of you. This project will demand everything you have to give. She stood, gathering her materials, then paused beside Mia's chair. A word, please, she said quietly, and Mia's heart jumped into her throat. They walked out onto the terrace overlooking the gardens, the autumn air crisp against Mia's skin. Victoria leaned against a stone balustrade, studying Mia with that penetrating gaze she'd first experienced at the audition. You have natural chemistry with Alexis. That's fortunate, because many of your scenes together will require deep intimacy and trust. But I need you to be careful, Mia. Alexis is brilliant, but she blurs lines between performance and reality. Don't lose yourself in this role or in her. Filming began at dawn, with the crew transforming the mansion's master bedroom into Elena and Sophia's shared space. Mia watched the organized chaos with fascination, observing how Victoria directed every detail with exacting precision. The bedroom set was stunning, all clean lines and expensive fabrics, beautiful but cold, reflecting the emotional temperature of the marriage it represented. Victoria had insisted on authenticity in every frame, which meant Mia and Alexis would actually be occupying this space, sleeping in this bed between takes, living as their characters even when cameras weren't rolling. It was method acting taken to an extreme, and Mia felt both exhilarated and terrified by the prospect. She'd never worked this way before, never been asked to surrender so completely to a role. Their first scene was deceptively simple, a morning routine where Sophia and Elena moved around each other with practiced choreography, two people sharing space but not lives. Mia had studied the blocking carefully, knew exactly where to stand, when to turn, how to convey Sophia's quiet desperation through small gestures and averted glances. But when the cameras started rolling and Alexis entered the bedroom in Elena's tailored suit, something shifted. Alexis didn't just play Elena. She became her, cold and distant yet somehow magnetic, moving through the scene with such natural authority that Mia found herself genuinely intimidated. When their characters' paths crossed near the closet and Alexis's hand brushed against hers, Mia's reaction was pure instinct, a flinch that perfectly captured Sophia's emotional state. Cut, Victoria called, but her voice held approval. Beautiful, both of you. That moment of contact, Mia, the way you pulled away, It told us everything about this relationship. Let's do it again. And this time, Alexis, I want Elena to notice that flinch. Let us see a crack in her armor, just for a second. They reset, and this time when their hands touched, Alexis paused, her expression flickering with something that might have been hurt or regret before the mask slammed back into place. It was a masterclass in subtle acting, and Mia felt privileged to witness it, to be part of creating something this layered and real. They ran the scene 5 more times, each take revealing new dimensions, until Victoria finally declared herself satisfied. Between setups, Alexis sprawled across the bed they'd be sharing for the next 6 weeks, scrolling through her phone with casual ease. "You're good," she said without looking up. "I was worried they'd cast some ingenue who couldn't keep up, but you actually understand the assignment. This chemistry we have, it's rare. I've worked with dozens of actresses, and most of them are just reciting lines. But you actually listen and react. It's refreshing." She finally looked at Mia, those green eyes assessing. "Tell me, have you ever been in love? Real love, not the romance novel version. The kind that tears you apart and rebuilds you into something you don't recognize." The question was so personal, so unexpected, that Mia didn't know how to respond. She thought about her few failed relationships, none of which had felt like what Alexis was describing. "I don't think so," Mia admitted, settling into a chair near the window. "I've dated, but nothing that felt consuming. Maybe I've been too focused on my career to let anyone get that close." Alexis laughed, a low sound that seemed to hold both amusement and sympathy. "How wonderfully tragic. You're about to play a woman discovering her capacity for real passion, and you've never experienced it yourself. That's going to make this interesting." She sat up, her expression suddenly serious. "Let me give you some advice, from one professional to another. To play this role honestly, you're going to have to access parts of yourself you might not know exist yet. Victoria will push you there, trust me. She has a gift for cracking people open and exposing their truth. The question is, are you ready for what you might find inside yourself?" Before Mia could answer, Victoria called them back to set for the next scene, one that would establish the routine emptiness of Sophia and Elena's daily interactions. They filmed for 12 hours straight, with Victoria demanding take after take until every moment felt authentic and earned. By the time they wrapped for the day, Mia was exhausted, her body aching and her emotions raw from inhabiting Sophia's unhappiness for so long. She trudged back to her suite, planning to shower and collapse into bed, but found a note slipped under her door. In elegant handwriting, it read, "Join me for dinner on the East Terrace at 8. We need to discuss your character's arc V." Mia's heart did something complicated in her chest, equal parts anticipation and nervousness at the prospect of a private meeting with Victoria. She showered quickly, then stood in front of her closet trying to decide what to wear, frustrated with herself for caring so much about her appearance. This was a professional dinner, a director meeting with her actress to discuss the role. But Mia found herself choosing a deep blue dress that brought out her eyes, applying makeup with more care than usual, checking her reflection multiple times before finally heading to the terrace. Victoria was already there, standing at the railing looking out over the gardens as twilight settled over the estate. She'd changed from her usual all-black work clothes into dark slacks and a charcoal silk shirt, her silver hair catching the last rays of sunlight. When she turned and saw Mia, something flickered across her face, an expression too quick to read, but intense enough to make Mia's breath catch. The terrace had been transformed into an intimate dining space, with candles flickering in glass holders and a small table set for 2. Mia's practical mind registered this as simply Victoria's aesthetic preference, her need for beauty and intention in every environment she controlled. But another part of her, a part she was only beginning to acknowledge, noticed the romance of the setting, the way the candlelight would catch in Victoria's dark eyes and cast shadows across her striking features. A server appeared to pour wine, then disappeared as silently as he'd come, leaving them alone with the night sounds of the garden and the weight of unspoken things hanging in the air. Victoria gestured for Mia to sit, and for a moment they simply observed each other across the small table, 2 women separated by age and experience, but connected by something neither had quite named. You did well today, Victoria began, swirling the wine in her glass but not drinking. Better than well, actually. You have an instinct for emotional truth that can't be taught. When Alexis touched you in that scene, your reaction was perfect because it was real. You weren't acting the flinch. You felt it. That's the difference between a competent actress and an artist. Mia felt warmth spread through her chest at the praise, hungry for Victoria's approval in a way that went beyond professional validation. Thank you, she managed. I'm learning so much already, just from watching you work. The way you see into the heart of every moment, it's remarkable. Victoria's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. Flattery, Mia? I'd have thought you more direct than that. It's not flattery if it's true, Mia said, meeting Victoria's gaze with more courage than she felt. I've studied your films since I was in college. The way you explore female desire and identity, the complexity you bring to women's stories, it's why I wanted to be an actress. To tell stories like yours, to be part of creating something that matters. This time Victoria did smile, a real one that transformed her severe features into something almost warm. Then you understand what I'm trying to do with this film. Sophia's journey isn't just about discovering her attraction to women, it's about discovering herself, period. She's spent her entire life performing the role everyone expected her to play. The good daughter, the perfect wife, the woman who makes herself small to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. The server returned with their first course, giving Mia a moment to collect her thoughts, to process the intensity of Victoria's focus on her. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the food exquisite but barely registering as Mia's attention remained fixed on the woman across from her. Finally, Victoria set down her fork and leaned back, studying Mia with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see straight through every defense. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Have you ever been attracted to a woman? The question hung in the air between them, casual in tone but weighted with significance. Mia's heart hammered against her ribs as she considered how to answer, aware that whatever she said next would change something fundamental between them. Mia started, then stopped, forcing herself to think before speaking. She'd never really examined this question before, had accepted without reflection the heterosexual identity she'd been raised to assume was hers. But sitting here with Victoria, feeling the pull of attraction she could no longer deny, she realized the truth had been there all along, waiting for her to be brave enough to acknowledge it. I don't know, she finally admitted. I've only dated men, but I'm not sure that was about actual desire or just about following the expected script. Like Sophia, maybe. Playing the role I thought I was supposed to play. Victoria nodded slowly, as if this answer confirmed something she'd already suspected. And now? Right now, in this moment, what do you feel? The question was a challenge and an invitation, both terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. Mia knew that honesty here could complicate everything, could blur the professional lines that should exist between director and actress. But she also knew that Victoria would see through any lie she tried to tell, and more importantly, she was tired of performing even in her own life. I feel, Mia said carefully, her voice barely above a whisper, like I'm standing at the edge of something that could change everything. Like I'm finally waking up after years of sleepwalking through my own existence. And yes, Victoria, to answer what you're really asking, I'm attracted to you. I have been since the audition, though I didn't let myself acknowledge it until now. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, a flash of what might have been satisfaction or desire or triumph. She reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of touching Mia's, close enough that Mia could feel the heat of her skin. I'm going to tell you something I've never told an actress before, Victoria said, her voice low and intense. I'm attracted to you too. You're beautiful and talented, and there's something about you that fascinates me. But I won't act on that attraction, Mia. Not while you're in my film, not while I have power over your career. What I will do is channel that energy into helping you give the performance of your lifetime. I will push you, challenge you, maybe even hurt you in the service of this art. And when the film is finished, when you've discovered who you really are through playing Sophia, then we can revisit this conversation. Can you accept that? The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of intensive filming and emotional excavation. Mia found herself sinking deeper into Sophia's world, the lines between actress and character becoming increasingly blurred. Victoria pushed her relentlessly, demanding take after take until Mia accessed emotions she hadn't known she possessed. But true to her word, Victoria maintained strict professional boundaries, never allowing their acknowledged attraction to manifest as anything inappropriate. Instead, that tension became fuel for the work, creating an electric atmosphere on set that everyone could feel but no one dared mention. Mia threw herself into the role with abandon, discovering parts of herself through Sophia's journey, while simultaneously becoming hyper-aware of Victoria's presence in every room, every conversation, every moment. But it was Alexis who began to complicate things in ways Mia hadn't anticipated. Their scenes together grew increasingly intimate as Sophia and Elena's marriage began its slow unraveling on screen. They filmed the confrontation scenes where Sophia demands emotional honesty from her distant wife, and Mia found herself actually angry at Alexis in those moments, frustrated by Elena's coldness even though she knew it was just acting. Alexis seemed to sense this authentic emotion and fed off it, giving performances of stunning vulnerability that left Mia breathless. Between takes, Alexis would drop the character completely, becoming warm and flirtatious, finding excuses to touch Mia's arm or shoulder, to stand closer than strictly necessary. It felt like a game, though Mia couldn't quite discern the rules or understand what Alexis wanted from her. One evening after a particularly draining shoot, Mia retreated to her suite to decompress, only to find Alexis knocking on her door 20 minutes later with a bottle of wine and that mischievous smile. "You look like you could use a drink," Alexis said, not waiting for an invitation before walking in and making herself comfortable on Mia's couch. That scene today, where Sophia finally breaks down and tells Elena she's suffocating in their perfect life.
You destroyed me, Mia.
I actually felt Elena's guilt, her helplessness. That's not supposed to happen. I'm usually much better at keeping my distance from the work. She poured them both generous glasses of wine, her green eyes studying Mia with an intensity that reminded her uncomfortably of Victoria's penetrating gaze, though Alexis's attention felt more predatory, less concerned with boundaries. "I just try to find the truth in every moment," Mia said, accepting the wine and taking a seat in the chair opposite Alexis, maintaining physical distance even as she felt drawn to close it. "Victoria taught me that. She says the audience can always tell when you're performing versus when you're actually feeling." Alexis laughed, a sound that held an edge. "Ah yes, our brilliant director. Tell me, Mia, what's really going on between you two? I've worked with Victoria before, and I've never seen her look at an actress the way she looks at you. It's hungry, possessive, like she's imagining all the ways she's going to break you open and reshape you into her vision of perfection." The observation was too accurate, too knowing, and Mia felt herself flush. "It's not like that. She's professional. We're professional." "Of course you are," Alexis said, but her tone suggested she didn't believe it for a second. She moved to sit on the arm of Mia's chair, close enough that Mia could smell her expensive perfume, feel the heat radiating from her body. "But let me ask you something. When you're lying in bed at night, alone in this big suite, who do you think about? Your intense, brilliant director with her silver hair and knowing eyes? Or me, your scene partner, the woman you spend all day touching and fighting with and pretending to love?" The question was bold, inappropriate even, but Alexis asked it with such casual confidence that it seemed to demand an honest answer. Mia's mouth went dry as she realized the truth. She thought about both of them, in different ways, with different flavors of desire she was only beginning to understand. "I think," Mia said carefully, setting down her wine glass with a hand that trembled slightly, "that this is exactly what Victoria warned me about. You blur lines, Alexis. You make it impossible to know what's real and what's performance." Alexis's smile widened, and she reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind Mia's ear, her fingers lingering against Mia's cheek in a gesture that was definitely not professional. "Maybe because the best performances are real, darling." Maybe I'm just more honest than Victoria with her rules and boundaries. I know what I want, and I'm not afraid to pursue it. The question is, what do you want, Mia? What does Mia Chen, not Sophia Morgan, actually desire? Before Mia could answer, before she could even process what was happening, Alexis leaned in, her intention clear, her lips parting slightly as she moved to close the distance between them. Mia stood abruptly, her heart pounding, putting the width of the room between them. "You should go," she said, her voice shaking. I can't do this, Alexis. Not with you, not like this." For a moment, something like hurt flashed across Alexis's beautiful face, quickly replaced by her usual amused mask. She stood, smoothing her clothes with studied casualness. "You're right, of course. I apologize for overstepping. The intensity of this production must be getting to me. We'll pretend this never happened, shall we?" She walked to the door, then paused, looking back at Mia with an expression that was hard to read. "But Mia, eventually you're going to have to stop running from what you feel and actually let yourself want someone. Otherwise, you're just like Sophia, performing a life instead of living one." Then she was gone, leaving Mia alone with her racing thoughts and the uncomfortable realization that Alexis might be right. Sleep eluded Mia that night, her mind replaying Alexis's words and the moment when those lips had been inches from her own. She'd wanted to kiss Alexis. That was the terrifying truth she couldn't escape. Not because of the script or the character, but because some part of her was genuinely attracted to the confident, beautiful woman who seemed to see right through her defenses. But she'd also thought of Victoria in that moment, of their agreement, of the respect and integrity the director had shown by refusing to abuse her position of power. Mia felt caught between two different versions of desire, two different ways of being, and she didn't know which path was right or if either of them truly was. By dawn, she was exhausted and confused, her emotions a tangled mess that she'd have to somehow sort through while giving a professional performance in just a few hours. The day's shoot was one of the most challenging scenes in the entire film, Sophia's first encounter with the woman who would awaken her dormant desires. In the script, this character was named Jordan, a brilliant young architect hired to redesign the company's headquarters. Victoria had cast an actress named Chen for the role, and Mia had met her briefly at the table read, noting her quiet confidence and striking androgynous beauty. But today was the first day they'd actually worked together, filming the scene where Sophia and Jordan meet during a company event and experience an immediate, undeniable connection. Mia arrived on set still raw from her sleepless night, her defenses already compromised, which perhaps was exactly the vulnerable state Sophia needed to be in for this pivotal moment. Riley was already in costume when Mia arrived, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that somehow managed to be both professional and effortlessly cool. She had short dark hair styled with casual precision, warm brown eyes, and a smile that was genuine rather than performative. When she shook Mia's hand, her grip was firm but not aggressive, confident without being arrogant. "I'm really looking forward to working with you," Riley said, and there was no trace of game playing in her voice, no hidden agenda or blurred boundaries. "I've watched the footage Victoria showed me from your earlier scenes. You're doing something really special with Sophia. I promise to give you everything I've got in our scenes together." The simplicity of it, the straightforward professionalism, was almost shocking after weeks of navigating the complicated dynamics with Victoria and Alexis. Victoria called them to their marks for the first take, and Mia felt her stomach flutter with nerves. This scene was supposed to capture the moment when Sophia first realizes she's capable of feeling genuine attraction, when her carefully constructed life begins to crack open. As the cameras rolled and Riley approached her at the fictional company party, Mia let herself really see Jordan, really respond to Riley's presence. There was something magnetic about Riley's energy, an authenticity that drew Mia in without any of the manipulation or power plays she'd become accustomed to. When Riley's character made a self-deprecating joke about being terrible at corporate small talk, Mia laughed genuinely, and Sophia's smile was real, the first moment of actual joy the character had experienced in the entire film. "Cut," Victoria called, and there was something different in her voice, a tension that hadn't been there before. "That was adequate." But Mia, I need you to give me more. This is the moment that changes everything for Sophia. I need to see her walls coming down, see the hunger for real connection breaking through her polished surface. Riley, you were perfect. Mia, again. They reset, and this time when Riley delivered her lines, Mia let herself be fully present, let herself feel the attraction without analyzing or controlling it. When their characters' hands accidentally touched while reaching for the same champagne glass, Mia didn't pull away. Instead, she held the contact for a beat too long, her eyes meeting Riley's, and in that moment Sophia realized what had been missing from her entire life. Victoria's cut came sharper this time, almost angry. "Everyone take 15, she announced, then stalked off set without another word. The crew exchanged confused glances, and used to seeing their usually composed director rattled. Alexis, who'd been watching from behind the monitors, approached with her arms crossed and that knowing smile playing at her lips. Well, she said quietly, so only Mia could hear. Looks like our director is experiencing something she didn't plan for. Jealousy is such an inconvenient emotion, isn't it? Mia's heart sank as she realized what was happening. Victoria was watching Mia develop genuine chemistry with Riley, chemistry that wasn't complicated by power dynamics or professional boundaries, and she was struggling with her own reaction to it. Riley, oblivious to the undercurrents, offered Mia a bottle of water and a sympathetic smile. Don't worry about Victoria's mood. She's a perfectionist and she pushes everyone hard because she cares about the work. You're doing great. Her kindness was so uncomplicated, so refreshing after weeks of emotional chess games, that Mia found herself wanting to prolong the conversation, to exist in Riley's straightforward presence just a little longer. They talked about the scene, about their characters' connection, and Mia realized she was enjoying herself in a way she hadn't since arriving at the estate. Riley was interesting and funny, passionate about her craft, but not self-important about it. When Victoria called them back to set, her face carefully neutral but her eyes stormy, Mia felt torn between the simple pleasure of working with Riley and the complicated pull of her feelings for the woman directing them. That evening, Mia was summoned to Victoria's private office in the mansion's West Wing, a space she'd never been invited to before. The room was exactly what she'd expected, elegant and austere, filled with books on cinema and philosophy, walls covered with black and white photographs from Victoria's most famous films. Victoria sat behind a massive desk, her face illuminated by a single lamp, shadows playing across her features in a way that made her look both beautiful and severe. She didn't speak when Mia entered, just gestured to a chair and continued reviewing footage on her laptop, forcing Mia to sit in uncomfortable silence while anxiety coiled in her stomach. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Victoria closed the laptop and fixed Mia with that penetrating gaze that had first captivated her at the audition. Your work with Riley today was good, Victoria began, her voice carefully controlled. The chemistry between you reads as authentic on camera, which is exactly what this scene requires. However, I noticed something troubling. You seemed more relaxed with her than you've been in any of your scenes with Alexis. Sophia shouldn't be comfortable in this moment. She should be terrified by what she's feeling, thrown completely off balance by this unexpected attraction. Victoria paused, letting her words sink in. So, I need to understand, Mia, are you actually acting in these scenes with Riley, or are you just being yourself? Because there's a difference, and if you've forgotten that distinction, we have a serious problem. The criticism stung, especially because there was truth in it, and Mia felt defensive walls rising even as she tried to remain professional. I'm giving you what the scene needs, Mia said, working to keep her voice steady. Sophia has been suffocating in a cold marriage for years. When she meets Jordan, someone who sees her and actually connects with her, of course she would feel some relief, some comfort. That doesn't mean she's not also terrified. Both things can be true at once. Victoria leaned back in her chair, studying Mia with an expression that might have been approval or disappointment. That's a good character analysis. But I wonder if you're projecting, Mia. Is Sophia comfortable with Jordan, or are you comfortable with Riley because she doesn't challenge you the way Alexis and I do? Because she's safe and uncomplicated and doesn't require you to face the messy, difficult parts of desire and identity that actually transform people. The accusation hit too close to home, and Mia felt anger flare hot in her chest. Is that what this is really about? You're upset because I connected with Riley without your permission, without it being part of your carefully orchestrated plan to transform me. She stood, unable to sit still under Victoria's dissecting gaze any longer. You said you wouldn't abuse your power as director, but that's exactly what you're doing right now. You're criticizing my performance not because it's wrong for the character, but because you're jealous that I shared something genuine with someone else. The words hung between them, dangerous and true, and Mia watched Victoria's expression shift from controlled professionalism to something raw, more vulnerable than she'd ever seen from the director before. You're right, Victoria said quietly, the admission seeming to cost her something. I am jealous, and that's unacceptable. I set boundaries between us because I believed it was the ethical thing to do, but I've been lying to myself about my motivations. I told you we'd revisit this conversation after filming, but the truth is I wanted you to wait for me while I maintained complete control over every aspect of your experience here. That's not fair, and it's not right. She stood, walking to the window that overlooked the darkened gardens. I've directed dozens of films, worked with hundreds of actors, and I've always maintained perfect professional distance. But with you, Mia, from that first audition, something was different. You got under my skin in a way no one has in years, and I don't know what to do with these feelings except try to control them, control you, control everything. Mia crossed to stand beside Victoria at the window, close enough to touch, but maintaining that last boundary between them. What if neither of us tried to control anything, she suggested, her heart pounding. What if we just acknowledged this is complicated and messy, and we're both navigating it imperfectly? You're not obligated to wait for me, Victoria. I appreciate that you want to protect me from power imbalances, but I'm an adult who can make her own decisions. And yes, Riley is easy to talk to, and that's refreshing. But that doesn't diminish what I feel when I'm near you, this intensity that scares and excites me in equal measure. Victoria turned to face her, and in the dim light from the lamp, Mia could see the war playing out across her features, desire battling with principle, want struggling against wisdom. If we cross this line now, everything changes, Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. Your performance, our working relationship, the integrity of this project. I've spent my entire career building a reputation for excellence and ethics. But standing here with you, I find myself not caring about any of that as much as I should. She reached up, her hand hovering near Mia's face but not quite touching, asking permission without words. Mia's breath caught as she realized they were at a precipice, that whatever happened in the next moment would reshape everything. But before either of them could move, before that space between them could close, a sharp knock came at the door. Victoria, we have a problem with tomorrow's call sheet, came the assistant director's voice from the hallway, shattering the moment like glass. Victoria stepped back, the professional mask sliding back into place with practiced ease, though Mia could see the frustration in her eyes. We'll continue this conversation later, she said, already moving toward the door.
And Mia?
You were right about what you said. Sophia can be both comfortable and terrified, both relieved and overwhelmed. Tomorrow, give me all of those layers. Show me you can hold the complexity instead of choosing one emotion over the others. Then she was opening the door, speaking to the assistant director about scheduling issues, and Mia was dismissed without another glance. She walked back to her suite on shaking legs, her mind reeling from what had almost happened, from Victoria's admission and her own boldness in confronting the director. Behind her closed door, she finally allowed herself to acknowledge the truth. She wanted Victoria desperately, but she also liked Riley genuinely, and somewhere in the tangled mess of it all, Alexis's bold confidence still pulled at her too. The next morning brought rain, forcing the production indoors to film one of the most emotionally demanding scenes yet. Sophia confronting Elena about the emptiness of their marriage while Elena, for the first time, allows her vulnerability to show. Mia and Alexis had rehearsed this scene extensively, but today felt different, charged with all the real tension that had been building between everyone on set. As Mia took her position across from Alexis in the elegantly appointed study they were using for Elena's office, she could feel Victoria's eyes on her from behind the monitors, a weight that was both inspiring and oppressive. Alexis seemed to sense the heightened atmosphere too, her green eyes gleaming with something that might have been anticipation or mischief, as they prepared for the emotional warfare their characters were about to wage. Action, Victoria called, and Mia launched into Sophia's impassioned speech about feeling invisible in her own life, about the slow death of living with someone who saw her as an accessory rather than a person. The words poured out with fury that came from somewhere deeper than just the character, tapping into Mia's own frustration with feeling controlled and observed and analyzed. Alexis, as Elena, responded with her usual cold precision, but as the scene progressed and Sophia's pain became undeniable, something shifted in Alexis's performance. Elena's mask began to crack, revealing the scared woman underneath, and when Sophia accused her of being incapable of real love, tears actually spilled down Alexis's cheeks. It was breathtaking, raw in a way Alexis's performances rarely were, and Mia found herself genuinely moved by the other woman's vulnerability. The scene built to its climax, where Sophia finally admits she's attracted to someone else, and Elena, rather than responding with anger, simply asks if this other person makes Sophia feel alive in a way she never did. In that moment, as written, Elena and Sophia share their only genuine moment of connection in the entire film, a bittersweet acknowledgement of how they failed each other. But when Alexis delivered the line, her hand reaching out to touch Mia's face with unexpected tenderness, something unscripted happened. Alexis leaned in, and their lips met in a kiss that was brief but unmistakably real, not the staged intimacy that had been blocked for a later scene. Mia was so surprised she didn't pull away immediately, and for a heartbeat they were actually kissing, Alexis's mouth soft against hers before the shock kicked in, and Mia stepped back. Cut. Victoria's voice rang out, sharp as a whip crack. The set fell into uncomfortable silence as everyone processed what had just happened. Victoria stood from her position behind the monitors, her face carefully neutral but her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Alexis, that was not in the script. We have very specific blocking for their intimate scenes, and improvising physical contact without consent is not acceptable on my set. Her voice was ice, and Alexis had the grace to look at least somewhat apologetic, though Mia detected a hint of satisfaction in her expression. You're right, of course. I apologized to Mia and to the production. I got caught up in the moment and crossed a line. It won't happen again. But her eyes said something different as she looked at Mia, a challenge or perhaps a question. Victoria called for a break, her jaw tight as she conferred with her cinematographer about the footage they'd captured. Mia escaped to her trailer, her emotions a confused tangle she couldn't begin to sort through. The kiss had been unexpected, yes, but also not entirely unwelcome, which made her feel guilty and confused in equal measure. She touched her lips, still able to feel the ghost of Alexis's mouth on hers, and wondered what it meant that her first kiss with a woman had happened as an unscripted moment on a film set. A knock came at her trailer door, and she opened it to find Riley standing there with coffee and a sympathetic expression. Saw what happened, Riley said gently. That was intense. Are you okay? Do you want to talk about it or pretend it didn't happen? Both options are valid. Mia accepted the coffee gratefully, gesturing for Riley to come inside the small but comfortable space. I don't even know what I feel right now, she admitted, sinking onto the couch. I came here to do a job, to give the performance of my career, and somehow I've ended up in this complicated situation where everyone wants something from me, and I don't know what I want from myself. Riley sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, but radiating warmth and understanding. For what it's worth, I think you're being too hard on yourself. You're not responsible for managing everyone else's feelings and expectations. Victoria is brilliant but controlling. Alexis is talented but manipulative. They're both putting pressure on you that isn't fair, and you're allowed to just focus on the work without having to navigate their drama. The simple clarity of Riley's perspective was like a lifeline, and Mia found herself opening up in a way she hadn't with anyone since arriving at the estate. She talked about her confusion regarding her sexuality, her attraction to Victoria, the complicated dynamic with Alexis, her fear of making the wrong choice or disappointing people or discovering she was someone completely different than she'd always believed herself to be. Riley listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions but mostly just giving Mia space to process out loud. "You know what I think," Riley finally said when Mia's words ran out. "I think you're so busy worrying about everyone else's narratives about who you should be that you haven't given yourself permission to just explore who you actually are. Maybe that's what Sophia's journey is really about, for you as much as for the character." The incident with Alexis created a shift in the entire production's atmosphere, bringing long-simmering tensions to the surface in ways that could no longer be ignored. Victoria called a company meeting that evening, gathering the entire cast and crew in the mansion's main hall to address professional boundaries and the importance of respecting the intimacy coordinator's protocols. She never mentioned Alexis by name, but everyone understood what had prompted the conversation, and Mia could feel sympathetic glances directed her way throughout Victoria's speech. Afterward, Alexis approached Mia privately, her usual confidence dimmed by something that might have been genuine remorse. "I owe you a real apology, not the performative one I gave on set. I convinced myself we had chemistry and that you wanted me to make a move, but I didn't actually ask for your consent. That was wrong, and I'm sorry." Mia studied Alexis's face, searching for manipulation or hidden angles, but found only honest contrition. "Thank you for that," she said carefully. "I appreciate the apology and I accept it. But I need you to understand something. I'm not a prize to be won or a conquest to be pursued. I'm a person trying to figure out who I am, and I need space to do that without pressure from you or anyone else." Alexis nodded, something like respect flickering in her green eyes. "You're right, and you deserve that space. For what it's worth, I think you're going to be extraordinary once you stop letting other people define you. I see glimpses of that person in your performance, this fierce, authentic version of Mia that's just waiting to break free." She squeezed Mia's hand briefly, then walked away, leaving Mia with the unexpected gift of closure and the beginning of what might eventually become friendship. The filming schedule had 3 weeks remaining, and Mia threw herself into the work with renewed focus and clarity. She took Riley's advice to heart, approaching each scene not as something to be perfect at but as an opportunity for genuine exploration and discovery. Her scenes with Riley deepened, the connection between Sophia and Jordan blossoming into something tender and real that made Mia's heart ache in the best possible way. They filmed a sequence where Jordan takes Sophia to a small art gallery, showing her a world beyond corporate events and carefully managed appearances, and the joy on Mia's face required no acting at all. Off camera, she and Riley had grown genuinely close, spending evenings talking about everything from their childhoods to their dreams for the future, building a friendship that felt easy and honest in a way Mia had rarely experienced. But it was her evolving dynamic with Victoria that surprised Mia most. After their interrupted moment in the office, they'd both pulled back, maintaining professional distance while filming continued. Yet something fundamental had shifted between them, an understanding that allowed for honesty without the games and power plays that had characterized their earlier interactions. Victoria pushed Mia in her direction just as hard as always, but now Mia pushed back when needed, trusting her own instincts about the character rather than simply trying to please the director. Their creative collaboration became a true partnership, each challenging the other to go deeper, be braver, find the emotional truth beneath every scripted moment. Victoria seemed to respect Mia more for standing her ground, and Mia found herself appreciating the director's intensity without feeling consumed by it. One evening during the final week of shooting, Victoria invited Mia for a walk through the estate's gardens, the same gardens where they'd first begun this complicated dance weeks ago. The autumn air had turned cold, winter approaching with undeniable certainty, and their breath formed small clouds as they walked the winding paths in comfortable silence. Finally, Victoria spoke, her voice thoughtful rather than commanding. "I've been thinking about what you said, about both of us trying not to control anything. You were right, as you usually are. I've spent this entire production trying to orchestrate not just the film but your entire experience, your awakening, your transformation. But the truth is, you've transformed yourself, Mia. Everything I saw in you during that first audition, all that potential and depth, you've accessed it not because I pushed you there, but because you chose to be brave. Mia felt warmth spread through her chest at Victoria's words, recognition from someone whose opinion she valued deeply. I couldn't have done it without you, though. Your vision for this project, the way you create space for real emotion and authentic storytelling, it gave me permission to explore parts of myself I'd kept locked away. I came here thinking I knew who I was, and I'm leaving as someone completely different. They stopped walking, facing each other in the fading light, and Victoria smiled with genuine affection. That's the thing about transformation, isn't it? We can't force it, only create conditions where it becomes possible. I wanted to be the catalyst for your awakening, but in the end, you were always going to be the author of your own story. The acknowledgement felt like a gift, releasing both of them from the complicated tangle of desire and control that had defined their relationship. When filming ends, Mia said, needing to voice what had been on her mind for days, I don't know what happens between us. I care about you, Victoria. You've changed my life in ways I'm still processing. But I don't think I'm in love with you, and I don't think you're in love with me either. I think we're both in love with the intensity, with what we've created together, with the version of ourselves that exists in this heightened space. Victoria nodded slowly, no hurt visible in her expression, only understanding. You're wiser than I gave you credit for. You're absolutely right. What I feel for you is admiration, attraction, creative passion, but it's not love. It's something else, equally valuable but not requiring us to build our lives around it. I think we'll both walk away from this production as different people, carrying something of each other forward but not bound to each other. The conversation should have felt sad, but instead Mia experienced profound relief and gratitude. They continued walking, talking about the film and their hopes for how audiences would receive it, eventually circling back to the mansion as full darkness fell. At the entrance, Victoria paused, then pulled Mia into a brief, warm hug. Thank you for teaching this old director that she doesn't always know best, she said with rare humor. And Mia? Whatever you decide about who you are and who you want to be with, make sure it's your choice, not anyone else's script for you. She released Mia and walked inside, leaving her standing in the cold night air with a sense of completion she hadn't expected. Tomorrow they would film the final scenes, including Sophia's choice to leave Elena and pursue her authentic life. And for the first time, Mia understood exactly what that meant, not just for the character, but for herself. The final day of principal photography arrived with unexpected sunshine, as if the weather itself wanted to celebrate the completion of their journey together. The last scene to be filmed was Sophia's departure from the life she'd constructed, the moment where she walks away from Elena's mansion with only a suitcase and the courage of her convictions. Mia stood in the grand foyer they'd used for so many pivotal scenes, surrounded by the entire cast and crew who'd gathered to witness this culminating moment. Victoria called for quiet on set, but before she could call action, she did something unprecedented. She stepped out from behind the monitors and approached Mia directly. "This is your moment," Victoria said softly, so only Mia could hear. "Everything we've worked for comes down to this single walk out that door. Show me who Sophia has become. Show me who you've become." The cameras rolled, and Mia, as Sophia descended the grand staircase one final time, her posture straight and proud in a way it had never been in earlier scenes. Alexis stood at the bottom as Elena, her face a mask of composed devastation, watching the woman she'd taken for granted finally choose herself. They'd rehearsed this moment, knew exactly what words would be exchanged, but when Mia reached the bottom step and looked into Alexis's eyes, she saw real emotion there, genuine respect mixed with theatrical sorrow. "I hope you find what you're looking for," Alexis said, the line imbued with multiple meanings that transcended character and spoke to the actresses themselves. Mia smiled, touched Alexis's cheek gently in a gesture of forgiveness and farewell, then walked past her toward the door where her new life waited. The camera followed her through the foyer, capturing each deliberate step, the way sunlight streamed through the windows illuminating her path forward. At the threshold, Mia paused as scripted, looking back one final time at the beautiful prison she was leaving behind. But instead of fear or regret on her face, there was joy, liberation, the kind of authentic happiness that comes from finally being honest with yourself. She stepped through the door into the sunlight, and the camera held on her face as credits would eventually roll, showing a woman transformed not by external forces, but by her own courageous choice. Cut. Victoria's voice rang out, followed immediately by spontaneous applause from everyone present. That's a wrap on She Played the CEO's Wife. Thank you all for your extraordinary work on this production. Mia felt tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the completion of this journey and everything it had meant, everything it had unlocked inside her. The crew swarmed around congratulating each other, but Mia found herself searching the crowd for one particular person. Riley appeared at her side as if summoned by Mia's thoughts, her warm smile a beacon of steadiness in the emotional chaos of the rap. "You were incredible," Riley said, pulling Mia into a hug that felt like coming home. "I couldn't take my eyes off you in that final moment. You weren't acting, you were just being completely, authentically yourself." They held each other for a long moment, and Mia realized that throughout all the intensity with Victoria and the complicated dynamics with Alexis, it was Riley who had consistently shown up without agenda or expectation. Riley who had listened without trying to shape her, who had offered friendship without demanding anything in return. When they pulled apart, Mia found herself not wanting to let go completely, her hand finding Riley's and holding on. "Can we talk?" Mia asked. "Somewhere quiet, away from all this?" Riley nodded, understanding in her eyes, and they slipped away from the celebration together. They ended up back in the gardens where so much of Mia's transformation had occurred, finding a bench beneath an old oak tree whose leaves had turned gold and crimson. For a while they sat in comfortable silence, hands still loosely intertwined, watching the afternoon light filter through branches. Finally, Mia spoke, her voice steady with newfound certainty. "I came here thinking I was playing a role, becoming Sophia for 6 weeks, and then returning to being Mia. But somewhere along the way, I realized Sophia's journey was showing me who I actually am beneath all the personas I've performed my whole life. I'm attracted to women. I'm queer. And saying that out loud doesn't terrify me the way I thought it would. It feels right, like finally speaking my native language after years of translation." Riley squeezed her hand supportively but didn't interrupt, giving Mia space to continue finding her words. "I got caught up in the intensity of what was happening with Victoria and with Alexis," Mia continued, needing to voice all of this while her courage held. "Victoria saw potential in me, and I mistook that recognition for love. Alexis offered excitement, and I confused that adrenaline for desire. But with you, Riley, everything felt different from the start. Easy, yes, but not in a boring way. In a this is what it feels like when someone actually sees you and likes what they see way. You never tried to shape me or push me or win me. You just showed up, consistently kind and genuine, and let me figure myself out at my own pace." She turned to face Riley fully, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "So, I need to know, was I reading too much into our connection? Because if you felt even a fraction of what I've been feeling, I'd really like to take you to dinner. Somewhere far from film sets and complicated dynamics. Just you and me, figuring out if this could be something real." Riley's face broke into a radiant smile that made Mia's heart soar. "I thought you'd never ask," she said, laughter in her voice. "I've wanted to ask you out since the second week of filming, but I didn't want to add to the pressure you were already under. Yes, Mia, I would love to have dinner with you. And breakfast and lunch, and as many other meals as you'll let me share with you while we figure out what this is between us." She leaned in slowly, giving Mia every opportunity to pull back, but Mia met her halfway. Their kiss was nothing like the scripted intimacy with Alexis or the charged almost moment with Victoria. It was soft and sweet and real, a beginning rather than a performance, and when they pulled apart, both women were smiling. Around them, the garden seemed to approve, leaves rustling in the autumn breeze like quiet applause for this genuine moment of connection. That evening, the production held a wrap party in the mansion's ballroom, and Mia moved through the celebration feeling lighter than she had in years. She hugged Alexis, and there was real warmth between them now. The complicated attraction transformed into mutual respect and the promise of future friendship. She found Victoria by the windows overlooking the estate, and they stood together one last time, director and actress, two women who had challenged and changed each other. You know, Victoria said thoughtfully, I've directed love stories for 20 years, but I think this might be the first time I've witnessed one actually beginning. Riley looks at you like you hung the moon, and you look at her like she's home. That's what I was trying to capture in this film all along. A real connection, the kind that transforms us. Mia smiled, following Victoria's gaze to where Riley stood talking with other cast members, her laugh carrying across the room. Thank you, Mia said simply. For everything. For seeing something in me I hadn't seen in myself. For pushing me and then knowing when to let go. For helping me find my way to who I'm meant to be. Victoria clinked her glass against Mia's in a toast. The pleasure was entirely mine. Now go be with your girl. Your real story is just beginning, and I have a feeling it's going to be extraordinary. Mia crossed the ballroom to Riley's side, slipping her hand into Riley's and feeling that rightness again, that sense of finally being exactly where she belonged. They'd exchange numbers and make plans, would navigate the logistics of dating while living in different cities, would figure out all the practical details that relationships require. But for now, in this moment, wrapped in music and celebration and possibility, Mia simply held Riley's hand and allowed herself to be completely, authentically happy. She had come here to play the CEO's wife, but in the end, she'd found something far more valuable, herself, her truth, and perhaps, if she was very lucky, her future.